Packers at Bears, NFC Championship on Sunday. Marco, I'm taking the handicapping lead on these games. Let's be honest, I'm pretty strong in the NFL. So this is going to be a treat, I think. All right. It's hard to imagine. This is such a, I was listening to our friend Chad Millman from ESPN on a podcast, and he was talking about how, oh my God, the Packers look so good, and it's so hard to think about taking. He's a Bears fan, so it's so hard to take the Bears. To me, it's just such a old school wise guy versus new school concept, and we've talked about this. Is old school would always take the home dog against the team that everyone's in love with. The new school sometimes knows that 20% of games where the team's just too hot, like the Patriots, literally everyone's talking about how smart they are, that, the Patriots weren't that good, they were outgained. But except if you would have bet against them the last 8 weeks of the year, you'd have lost a ton of, when they went to Chicago, the Patriots were 3, right? So I guess my question is, I lean Bears here, and I got some specific reasons. But let me ask you, as an old school wise guy, why wouldn't you play the Bears? Home dog against a highly public team. Old school's looking at the Bears. Why wouldn't you play the Bears?
Well, the thing that Green Bay has going for them, and I talked about this on a couple different podcasts that I've done with Gil and Mike and Dan, is Green Bay is the one team that came into the playoffs, that came in and had to earn their way in the final couple weeks. They were in a must-win situation the final 2 weeks, and then carried that momentum in. There's something to be said about that when you're already in playoff mode. I've referred to the San Francisco Giants this past year in the World Series. They rode that all the way to a championship. That's the plus side. They're hot. They've got the momentum.
Let's dig into this a little bit, though. Football is different than baseball. Can the case be made that maybe in the first round helps you, and in the second round maybe helps you? Can the case be made that the championship round is when maybe that pressure, that it's been a month now that we can't make any real mistakes, does that become counterproductive?
Well,
because let's be honest, but in the first week, the theory is you were in playoff mode last week. The team you're playing maybe wasn't. Like Eagles, for example, weren't. In the second week,
it was the same thing.
It's the same thing. But in the third week, the team that you're playing also won the week before. So they've at least been in playoff mode 1 week, but they're a little bit rested. And let's be honest, the whole 3 road game, we're going to be talking about this in the Jets.
That's another old school theory about the 3 road games, that that's a big negative on the Green Bay side, having to win 3 games in a row on the road.
Having to play 3 games in a row. And then when you add in the 4th game back, was a must-win also. And the Bears didn't lay down in that season finale game. It really makes me wonder. I agree with you, and I had never thought of it that way. Week 1, you're likely playing a team that wasn't in a must-win the week before, so you're a little sharper. Week 2, same thing, though, there's that, trade-off between being sharp versus being rested. The Ravens were sharp, but now in week 3, it seems like it's all negative. You've had the pressure on for a long time. You're tired. The other team is sharp because they won. And let's be honest, the Bears look good in that game. So how do you look at that? Do you throttle back the value you put on that must win when you do get to this round?
Definitely, yeah. Now you're into the championship. That's a perfect analogy, and it makes this game even tougher. Is Green Bay, that hot team, rolled through Philadelphia, a team that, although they did play earlier in the year, is not a team they play twice a year. Same thing last week. They played Atlanta, a team they did play earlier, but not twice a year. Now you've got that final game to get to the Super Bowl. Lo and behold, it's a different handicap because it's a team you play twice a year. This is a third meeting. And we talked about that last week with both the Jet game with New England and Pittsburgh and Baltimore, that when teams, you play them twice a year, every year, you know them inside and out. And in this case, just like the Steelers and Ravens, this is your arch rival. This is your hated rival.
So how does that reality, the Packers and the Bears play twice every year, interdivision. How does that affect your handicap in this game?
Well, I think that when I look at it, I'm looking at this game and say the public perception is so high on Green Bay, as you said, that they're overcompensating for how good Green Bay looks.
In the line.
In the line.
So let's say it's 3.5. You know, it's flickering between 3 and 3.5, and you're laying the big juice at 3. I think the odds are pretty good. You're looking at 3.5 on game day. So at 3.5, does that feel like? What do you think the action is going to be at 3.5?
I still think that the public, you know, now this is, I'm talking number of bets, not actual money. Number of bets are going to be Green Bay. Green Bay is going to be the heavier side. Anybody that's looked at Green Bay right now, that offense looks invincible. A point that I'm going to make to you, and this is something that a lot of people are forgetting, last week's game, that was probably the best performance I've seen in the playoffs by a quarterback. Absolutely.
A lot of people are saying that.
Let's remember, it was in absolute perfect conditions. It was an indoor field, fast track. You're taking this game outdoors, and you're taking it to one of the worst places to play outdoors, Chicago. Now, granted, Green Bay is a team that plays outdoors too in cold weather, but Rodgers isn't going to look as sharp as he looked last week. The elements are going to be a little bit of an equalizer.
No, I agree with that, and we're going to do a second video on this game and talk about the over and under, the total, and I'm going to talk more about the track there, and I'm going to talk about the fact that they've played 2 games, you know, this year, and what that means. Let's take one more minute and talk about the line. Mm-hmm. Could this line have came out at 5? I think the point I'm making is I think that they put this line up. Well, it opened closer to 3. You know, it's moved up a little bit. Could the case be made that do you think they thought there was any chance they were going to get Bears action at 3? In a way, you almost got to ask yourself that it seems like the books weren't afraid of the Green Bay action because really, let's think about it. It's that old, you know, there was a great, I don't know, this is dating me just a little bit, but there was a show Taxi. And I didn't watch the first run, but I watched it on Nick at Night. And there was a scene where Reverend Jim, the crazy dude, Christopher Lloyd or whatever, his dad ended up being a millionaire, and he told Lou, who was the Danny DeVito, he said, "I will pay you whatever you think is right to watch over my son. I'll pay you an annual fee." He goes, "You just tell me what's fair." And the next scene, you see Danny DeVito, and he's got his head in his hands, and he's going, "There's a number that's too high, but then there's a number that's too low. I've got to find the right number." And think about it, that's what the bookies are saying, is if they know they're getting Green Bay action and they don't want it, at what point in this line would they have gotten more Chicago? Clearly, if it came out Green Bay 7, they would have gotten a ton of Chicago. Mm-hmm. But if it would have came out of Green Bay 4, do you think they would have gotten a ton of Chicago? And if not, my point is, I think they don't mind the Green Bay action, is what I'm feeling.
You know, talking historically, there's a lot of history against Green Bay in this game. And the history is, you know, the NFC, the number 6 seed going to the Super Bowl. That's not happened. And we're talking a home underdog in the playoffs. Since 1980, there has only been 29 home underdogs in the playoffs. 29. 20 have gotten the money.
So home underdogs are 20 out of 29. That's a great stat.
It's dating me. But it just goes to the fact that it doesn't happen that often. And if you think about it, and I didn't actually get the breakdown on it, but it would only make sense. You would think that when there is a home underdog, it's more in that first week because you've got, you know, like a Seattle that, you know, won a weak division.
Whoa, excuse me.
That's the first time we've had that this year.
I know.
But it's a situation that, you wouldn't think it would happen in the championship game.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, especially with the division winners, since they changed the format, you've had a decent amount of those road favorites.
So you're going to have a lot of old school guys that are going to look at the Bears for sure.
And it brings up one more point, and we'll segue into the totals video. This line is the same as it was. If I'm not mistaken, the Monday night game was
Right.
3.
And if you remember the Monday night game, Green Bay had the game won. They had a turnover late that Chicago turned into the game-winning field goal at the end of the game.
I mean, you can always say, well, if they would have caught this, they would have caught that. Well, Green Bay, I mean, Chicago won the game, and Chicago hadn't really turned their. Chicago's playing a lot better
Oh,
now.
absolutely.
So the question is Green Bay playing not only better, but better beyond, whatever the difference is between Chicago then and now, the Green Bay difference has to be that and more to make 3.5 the right line.
Well, the difference with Green Bay right now is they're as healthy as they've been all year. This Green Bay team had injuries all year. And where a lot of the injuries were that people just forget about this team was on defense. This team is playing super defense right now. And all of a sudden in the last 3 weeks, they found a running game that they didn't have all year.
All right, so I'm going to project this, and then we're going to go to the totals video and talk a little bit about that. I'm projecting Chicago to actually win this game in a tight game. And for me, it's simple, is, as you always say, you're never as good as your best game, and Green Bay has played their best game, and this line is accounting for that. And this Chicago team's under the radar right now. I certainly think that this is almost a pick'em game, and getting 3.5 to me is great value. Okay, now we're going to go and talk the total in a separate video. You can get all of those at pregame.tv. And remember, you can continue the conversation in the comment section with Marco and me.